Hello and welcome to Sunday's History Hack. We have been promising you an awesome interview, and we've had so many people going absolutely crazy for this because this is our Hornblower reunion. We are absolutely thrilled to welcome Ioan Gruffudd to the show. Hello.
Hello.
He is looking disgustingly suntanned and healthy because he's in LA. But we also have, because we can't have Horatio without having Archie. So Jamie Bamber's joining us from London. Hey, Jamie.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. So guys, how is lockdown?
Do you want the honest truth?
Are you enjoying it a bit?
Well, look, I was very fortunate. I just finished a job. I was 5 or 6 days shy from finishing a job in Australia. So I was very happy to come home and do nothing and relax and be with the family. So it started off blissful, of course. And now the reality of it, I think, is setting in and, getting that discipline to educate my kindergartner or my 6-year-old every day has become a bit of an ordeal.
Oh, brilliant. So was that Harrow you were filming?
Yes. I was filming season 3 of Harrow in Australia, yeah. So that'll be the first thing I do once all these, sanctions or whatever are lifted. I'll be going back there to shoot the final 5 days. Brilliant.
I love that lately you've taken a couple of roles where you're not so nice. And actually you're a downright gitbag in Liar. I was saying that after most of series 1 I was torn because I wanted to hate you, but you were so charming you couldn't. But I'm over that now. I'm 3 episodes into season 2 and you're horrible. How do you do it? How do you play that part?
I mean, look, to be honest with you, it's probably the hardest thing I've ever had to do. The second season of Liar. The first season of Liar, I was essentially just being my charming self as much as I could. There wasn't really much acting required. It was left to the audience's imagination and the audience's knowledge of what was going on behind the scenes. But season 2, he's a man who's on the run. He's desperate. He's in complete disarray and is in complete denial. And I think that was probably the hardest thing I've ever had to do. I mean, I found myself running off to the corner and crying during the day, after some scenes because I was representing somebody who's just didn't have the grasp of what was actually happening to him.
Well, that as well, and that scene where you see the son in hospital, that was horrible. That looked like it was pretty ugly to film.
No,
am I spoiling you now?
Stop, you're spoiling it. I'm binge watching this. Stop.
Okay, all right, let's move on to Jamie. Jamie, how's London lockdown?
Yes.
London lockdown's a lot like being an unemployed actor, to be honest. And my life hasn't really changed that much. I sit on the same chair looking for inspiration and reading, and I walk the dog once a day, go for a nice run. The difference is I've got my 3 teenage girls and my wife looking at me while I do nothing, and that's the challenge.
But they're judging you now, as in is this what you do all the time?
Well, I'm quite good at feeling guilty about doing very little with my life. But it's when I look at them, I think I really should be, inventing some wheel that hasn't been invented yet.
Brilliant. We also have with us today Kate Jamieson, who's a fantastic historian of 18th century naval affairs. Hi, Kate.
Hi, how are you?
You're down on the south coast, aren't you?
I am indeed, although I'm not close enough to the sea that I can actually get to see it, which is disappointing.
Can't you now? You can walk there apparently so you can travel to do your exercise as long as your exercise is longer than the journey there or something. Because I can't get away with Brighton because it's 40 miles. But can you get away with the sea?
I could get away with probably going to the New Forest and doing a massive bike ride if I did that, but I'd feel a bit cheeky doing it, so I'm trying to stay close to home and be good.
What we're going to do, we're going to mix up, we have so many questions for you guys, and I've tried to put them in some kind of sensible order, and failed completely. One thing about coronavirus, actually, I wanted to say is I've adopted this philosophy of what would Horatio do, because he's so sanctimonious and so good all the time, that every time I think, I'm going to pop out to the shops, I'm going to go, now what are you going to buy? What would Horatio do? Would Horatio consider this an essential purchase? And therefore, should you go? And if the answer is no, Horatio would not, then I'm not allowed to go.
Horatio would wait outside the shop until everyone else had gone in and bought everything. and then knock on the door just as it was shutting and find there's zero bog roll and never was. That's what.
And leave with like an out of date loaf of bread to live on, and he wouldn't even bitch about it, would he?
No. He
wouldn't complain.
Yeah, so that's it. From now on, I don't want to hear anyone's complaints, anyone's bitching. I want you to just think, what would Horatio do? And if the answer is Horatio Hornblower would not be complaining right now, then you need to shut up and move on. So I think I'm going to get T-shirts made. What would Horatio do? And disseminate them around southwest London. So let's start. Now I've completely got rid of any professionalism. Let's talk about how you got involved in Hornblower. Ioan, I've always wanted to know, was it a case of the people doing Hornblower saw you sink with the Titanic and think, there's our man? Or did it overlap? Was it like, well, if he can survive the Titanic and he was pretty good in that, then I reckon he'd be all right in Hornblower?
Well, you know what? There's an interesting story about my first ever meeting with Andrew Gruffudd, our fantastic director. He and I sat down, and the first question he asked me was, what have you been doing with yourself these last 6 months? But please, please, please don't talk about your last job. I hate actors talking about themselves and their last jobs. And I had to take a calculated risk and say, well, actually, I've just come off the biggest movie ever made about a ship. And I know this show was all about a guy on a ship. So I went for it, and I just told him I was down in Baja, Rosarito, Mexico, shooting the Titanic with James Cameron. And of course that was it. We just hit it off immediately because he just lapped it up. Any information that I had about how we went about shooting it, he was just, tell me more. How did you do this? How did you do that? So it was, it was one of those moments I thought, yeah, bugger it. I'm going to go for it and be honest.
I absolutely had to shoehorn Titanic in because I'm a Titanic historian, and my friend actually wrote the biography of Fifth Officer Lowe, so she's dead jealous about this interview. But Jamie, how did you come to Hornblower? Is it right it was your first acting job?
Yeah, I was at drama school in LAMDA in London, and it was not only my first acting job, I think it was my first audition. But I hadn't just been on the biggest film ever made, so I was at a disadvantage. Because I auditioned for Hornblower and did a camera test, which is something they don't do very much anymore for television, but I wasn't to know any different. I mean, you must have done it too, or not?
Yes, we tested a few times, once just as a regular actor, and then in full costume and the full garb.
Yeah, that's what I did, full garb. For me, it was literally the first casting director. I think I went in for a different thing, for a small movie, a contemporary film, and then I was ushered down the corridor and met the casting director, John Hubbard, who lumped this big old wodge in front of me, and I think I was in to see Andrea the same day or something weird, and read for Hornblower. But it was all so new to me, and then did the screen test with all the makeup, with actors, with a set. They had a set. with ropes lying around, and I think they were even. I remember one of the scenes was a scene where you're betting, or Stiles is betting on how many rats he can kill with his mouth, and Hornblower tells him off.
Did that ruin you as an actor? Were you expecting that every other audition you went to after Archie?
Well, sort of. Yeah. I mean, I guess the whole business has changed a bit over the years. Now we just do self tapes in our pants, as long as you've got a t-shirt on and your top half's okay, you're fine.
That's how we record this podcast.
Like this, we don't know what I'm wearing. So now it's all changed. But then I remember doing a couple of full-on costume camera tests where they actually hired people to act with you. It was great. I loved it. It was wonderful. And for me, obviously, I got this lovely letter not that long afterwards saying that they had another role for me. And for me, I was just over the moon. And I didn't know what the role was because obviously Archie wasn't quite as featured in the stories at that point. But then, yeah, dream come true. I had a job. I was still training, and then
just to get this out of the way, because people asked, do you still hang out and everything? You guys have remained friends ever since, haven't you?
Yeah.
Yes, we have.
Well,
how long has it been now, Jamie?
I lived in LA for a long time, so Yo and I would play a lot of golf. He's godfather to one of my little ones, and we're very close, although we're separated by many thousand miles these days, and haven't seen each other for quite a while now. It's been 2 or 3 years.
That's been a few years. Yes, it has. It has.
That's exactly what everyone wanted to hear. They wanted to hear that you love each other. So this is coming from someone who just calls himself SNDS. I don't know what it stands for. He says, for both of you, what kind of historical research did you do, if any, for your roles? Were there any specific insights you latched onto? Any specific historical figures you may have used as role guidance? Who were they, and what affected your performances most?
Ioan.
Well, look, it's an interesting process. Every actor is different and has his or her unique process. I think for Hornblower, the scripts were so strong. I mean, the character really leapt off the page. So most of my research really was getting into the technicalities of, how these ships worked. I mean, there's a great book that I read called Nelson's Navy, and it also has an illustrated version of it. So, and there's a great book about the cross section of a man of war. So because I was on camera every day, all day, learning my craft for the first time, being front and center that way, what helped me was knowing what the hell I was talking about technically. All those orders that were being barked at me, or I was barking at other people. So in terms of, inspiration for the character was already there really, in the scripts. I mean, clearly, he is loosely based on Horatio Nelson, obviously. But in terms of getting inspired as an actor and getting into the costume and who this character is, I think it was already there on the page. So all the research that I did was, just understanding what I was saying at any given time.
I cut this from the questions, but I'm going to chuck it in anyway. Why do you count, Kate can answer if you can't, why do you count like 2-6 instead of 1-2? You count 6-2 or 2-6 instead of counting 1-2, that when you're trying to break into that battery, battery.
Yes, there's like a 2-6 bang. There's a ramming of something. That's right. Yes, yeah. Clearly, I've forgotten my research.
Kate, why is that?
So, it's thought it didn't actually come around till I think the 50s or the 60s, but I don't know where it's come from. I think it might have come from a film of some description. But people used to think it was how the gun crews pulled on the guns together, so it's 2-6 heave, 2-6 heave. The Navy now use it for tug of war competitions.
Oh, really?
And it's a very effective way of winning a tug of war competition if ever you find yourself in one. But yeah, it's kind of one of those myths that people think of is from the 18th century Navy, but actually I think it started in the 50s or the 60s, unfortunately. But
so we'll just edit this out then. Okay.
No, leave it in. It's interesting.
Which episode was that in? Which film was that in? Which writer has committed the anachronism crime?
It's the one where Christian Coulson buggers off and leaves you.
That was after me, wasn't it?
It is. It's the one after you died.
I'm so glad now I don't feel
yeah, you were off the hook.
I didn't have to know.
So is that mutiny? Is it mutiny, Kate?
I wasn't there for that one.
Yes, it could be mutiny or retribution. Right?
Yeah, it's one of those two.
I wasn't there for those. Don't bother.
Yeah, because it definitely involves Wolf and that.
He's the one that's related to Hammond, right?
Yeah.
Wasn't there for that. Anyway.
Jamie's off the hook. Jamie, what did you look at before going?
Well, my research consisted of reading Forrester's books. I just just got into the books before my audition, and then I don't think I did any sort of huge historical research. Obviously, my character was cobbled together from several characters, so my primary job was to work out which characters in the book I could draw upon.
Yeah, this is interesting because Sophie Figueres said, she's the one that did, if you saw it on Twitter, that little character of baby Horatio and baby Archie for you guys. She said, as you played a character that wasn't in the books, how did you create a deeper version of him? And she also asked, as it was your first acting job, is there anything you know now you wish you'd known then?
Oh gosh, so much. I mean, look, I knew nothing. On my first day, the first day's shoot it was the big old tracking shot scene over 2 decks in the Justinian, welcoming Hornblower onto the ship. And, you know, it was a real ship, and the whole 2 decks had like baby pigs and prostitutes. And it was just, livestock, hundreds of extras, smoke, and I had to speak non-stop for 2 pages introducing him to this whole world. And here was me, the completely novice screen actor, literally haven't done a scene on camera ever. And my friend here that I'm introducing, and showing around the ship has been on the biggest movie about ships of all time, the biggest movie of all time. And so I remember having to go up to, it was the sound recordist, his name was Christian, I can't remember his last name, maybe Ioan can help me. And I had to say, how loud do I talk? I've got a microphone, and you're pointing a microphone at me. What do I do here? Like, am I, you know, everyone tells you as an actor, oh, screen acting and stage acting is just the same, except on screen you just don't do very much. Well, that wasn't going to cut any mustard in this tracking shot, because it was just, hell was breaking loose, chaos. Anyway, he just said, just talk to people as they need to be talked to in this particular context, and we got through the day. But going back slightly earlier, I realized that my character was a function. You know, Hornblower doesn't have a best friend until he meets, or someone to confide in until he meets Bush later on. And I'd read that far, so I sort of knew what Bush was going to bring to the party. And I guess my job was to be that slightly less fortunate, less talented sailor until that moment, and to mess up as much as possible along the way so that my friend could look really good, and then I could
that's really nice.
Be envious.
Alina, this is why everyone loves Archie.
Didn't I do that well? But then my big challenge was also the epilepsy. So the real whole point of the original Archie Kennedy is this character who gets epilepsy, who is obviously traumatized by Dorian's character, who was called, I can't remember. Simpson, the same. Simpson. So I'm the bully victim that needs a big brother, and ironically, I'm the one who knows my way around the ship, and he's seasick and is his first posting as a midshipman. So very quickly the roles shift, and he becomes the natural, capable seaman, and I'm the one that has relied on privilege and noble birth to get to where I am, but I'm really not cut out for it. So there were it was a sort of inverse journey where I start off part of the family, and very quickly the friendship bonds, because we sort of need each other in different ways at the beginning. But
I wanted to ask you about the epilepsy scenes, because as someone who didn't really do a lot of straight acting, I always thought that must be the most horrible thing to do, because it's like striking a line between getting it right and making it look almost comical or disrespectful.
Yeah, you did see it. Yeah, exactly.
You struck that line perfectly, though.
No. It's one of those things that I did a lot of research into epilepsy, and I had a bunch of videos from the Epilepsy Society, and they sent me examples of grand mal fits and petit mal fits and what they can be. And epilepsy is there's a massive range. People have seizures and you're not even aware. They just suddenly don't talk, or one eye goes, or it can be anything. But Andrew Grieve was very clear that he wanted the full thing. He wanted the full body thing. So, again, as a newbie actor, it was one of those moments. You go for it or you don't. And I guess I went for it. And I'm not sure if it was entirely authentic. I don't know what it's like to have a fit, but I had a go at emulating what I'd seen in these old VHS videos that I had taken all the way to the Crimea.
From what you're saying, it sounds like there's not really scope for people to say, well, you did it wrong, if they're so varied anyway, as long as you...
You noticed that, did you? Yeah, I threw that in there.
Genius. Alina, do you want to do Samantha's question?
Yeah, we've got a question from Samantha for both of you guys. So, while researching your characters and the time period, was there anything about the Royal Navy or French Revolutionary Napoleonic Wars that particularly intrigued or horrified you?
Well, I was intrigued about how much alcohol each sailor consumed every day. It's something ridiculous, you'll know, but it's something ridiculous, like 14 pints or something every day was a man's ration on the ship, because you couldn't drink the water. There was no water to be drunk. It wasn't safe. So you drank small beer, I guess. So facts like that. The facts kept on coming because Andrew Gruffudd, our director, is a sailor and a lover of the sea and of all things maritime. So he would know why we toe the line and the square meals and the freezing the balls off a brass monkey or whatever.
Swinging a dead cat.
Swinging a dead cat. No swinging a cat. Exactly. All those things. So we had those wonderful contributions to the English language that we all use, and we discovered those every day. So personally, I love history. I'm a big Francophile. I studied French and Italian, and the French Revolution's always, for me, the most interesting bit of relatively modern history. It's so much responsible for so much of the way we think about humanism and equality and all the rest of it. And I'm not saying I'm an expert in any of it, and I'm not also saying, the Horatio Hornblower novels they're not Patrick O'Brian. They don't try to explain all that. Horatio's always quietly on the edge of the major historical events so that he doesn't have to rewrite history or get too involved in all that. But I really enjoyed the clothes, everything. I can't describe how excited I was the first day when we drove down to see this real frigate, docked in this port. I also love sailing. I love the sea. And, to be on a big budget television show like that with, major movie stars who'd worked on the biggest film ever made.
Not only that, but rescued Kate Winslet as well.
Exactly. He'd done everything. And, I was super, super excited and intimidated to meet Ioan and everyone else. And, the historicity of it, the historical period being one of the most, romantic in British history as well, doesn't hurt.
No. Ioan, do you have any idea how iconic that line is in Titanic when you say, is there anyone alive out there? Can anybody...
Is there anyone out there?
Yeah.
I think it's every other TikTok now that you see.
To all Titanic historians, it was like ringtones, message alerts, everything. Yes.
No, I get asked to do it all the time. But I hear myself on those TikToks often now. People were sticking their cameras out the windows and seeing all the empty streets because of the lockdown, and they've dubbed that. They dubbed that over the top.
Really? I need to Google this now. I'm going to go on TikTok and have a look.
She hasn't seen Titanic for a long time. Ioan, what about you? Is there anything that intrigued or horrified you about the Navy?
Well, you know what? Again, going back to the physicality of it, I don't think I personally would have lasted, a week, maybe even a day on a ship of the line during that period. Such were the conditions, just the seasickness itself, the tight quarters, the dampness, the food, the discipline, I don't know. The physicality of it struck me every day because we were physically sailing every day in that first season. In the first 2 episodes, we sailed on the Black Sea in the Crimea every day for about 12 weeks, 6 days a week. So we got a real sensation of what it might have been like, to be in those costumes, to work under those sort of conditions. So on the show, for example, if you were to see, a cow being winched off, a raft onto the Indefatigable, actually physically doing that, on the Black Sea in the Crimea. There's no CGI or anything involved. So it was an incredibly physically demanding shoot, day in, day out, let alone the acting part of it. Just standing straight, standing upright, keeping your balance. So it was a real baptism of fire for a young actor to be thrust into that leading role and to be surrounded, as Jamie said, with greatness. I mean, people like Robert Lindsay, who was a massive mentor of mine. And every day you were so grateful for somebody like Andrew Gruffudd, our director, who was very much like James Cameron, just fiercely passionate about getting this right and getting it to look right and feel right. So yeah, there was a lot to be. Obviously, it marks the beginning of my career, and to have a part that follows you for the rest of your life, I mean, is really a gift, and I got it, right out of the gate.
Kate, how accurate were they when it came to portraying the grim side of life?
Reasonably, I would say. I think the thing that I noticed the most about Hornblower is that you actually see splinters. So if you watch, I don't know, Pirates of the Caribbean, you see the fights and there's no sort of blood or gore or anything. But Master and Commander and Hornblower have both done it very, very well. You've got people being flung around all over the place. I think there's a kind of tendency to romanticize these sort of battles at sea and everyone kind of doing their duty, doing what they should be doing. And Hornblower did it very well. And actually, in terms of historical accuracy for kind of where they were around those historical events, like you said, that's covered. They cover the press gangs. They're covering taking the merchant seamen off the East Indiamen. There's plenty in there that ties in with lots and lots of naval history aspects.
So the first episode, the Even Chance, starts in 1793-94, doesn't it? It's quite a good impression that you get of the Navy being bored out of their minds. How accurate is that, and what have they been doing, and why are they sat there?
Pretty accurate. So most of the Channel Fleet at that point, they started a blockade of Brest in around 1793. But a lot of the time prior to that, they were just stuck in Spithead, which is where Hornblower famously got seasick, which is actually kind of just off the Isle of Wight, sort of between Portsmouth and the Isle of Wight.
Very sheltered there and very flat seas. No excuse for any kind of vomiting.
You would struggle to get seasick there unless it is the very roughest thing, unfortunately. But yeah, it's peacetime. Plenty of people were laid off. There wasn't much to do. I guess the reason you see them going out with the press is because in peacetime you had to really go and find these people ready for when the Navy went to war. And thankfully, Britain had quite a good merchant fleet. They were very well trained, so you're always looking for the merchant sailors because you could kind of go into these port towns and pick them up when the ship came in, which is, I guess, why they were looking for the East India convoy to come in. You wouldn't, I think there's a myth with the press gang that people would just go and drag men from their beds and drag them from their weddings and drag them from the pub and take them off to sea. And the landsmen were useful because obviously they hauled on lines and they could bring in sails and things, but you wanted trained seamen more than anything else.
Yeah, and one thing you did well was the completely miserable look on your face when you first climbed aboard the boat. And Simon Jones wants to know, were you really seasick?
Actually, you know what? I got the sensation every day, but I soon got over it because I had so much work on my plate. I mean, and somebody taught me very early on just to look at the horizon, and that would always balance your head out. But unfortunately, sadly, the one person on the first season, on that first episode out in the Crimea that really got properly seasick every day, God bless him, was Neve, our director of photography. Yeah. He honestly couldn't cope with it at all.
And he was green, wasn't he? Throwing up over the sky all day. Oh,
poor guy. He was a mess. So he would manage to walk over and take a reading, a light reading, and give some commands, and then go back and be over the edge of throwing up, bless him, or sitting in a corner shivering. And luckily I didn't suffer as greatly as some. But it was always there. And the worst part for me was getting off the ship at the end of the day, because we were out at sea for all those hours. And you'd come in under the cover of darkness, and it was getting the sea legs once you were back on dry land. That was the hardest thing to cope with. It was felt as if you had a couple of drinks already.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I must sing Ioan's praises here. He's always very modest, but being in every single shot of every single scene for 12 weeks on the sea all day, every day, and there's no trailer to go to. There's no comfort. You literally just have to go below decks and find if you had 10 minutes, and that's the most he ever had. Pretty extraordinary.
I was going to ask a bit later on about which one where you're in jail. That sounded, but you're dying, Archie. But that must have been a breeze. That was just lying around in the sunshine filming that.
My whole life was a breeze. I worked one in every 3 days. The rest of the time, well, in the Crimea was tough because there was nothing to do. So then you go a bit mental because all I wanted to do actually was to be on set and just be part of it. And I would have happily just gone there every day and just sat around, but that's not the dumb thing. It's not cool to be too keen. So I didn't do that. I left it to Ioan to be in every single shot, which he did admirably, I thought. But when we got onto dry land, so that's the the second 2 films and the third 2 films, which we shot respectively in Portugal and then in Menorca. I mean, I just couldn't believe that you got paid to go on what's basically a summer holiday with your mates. So at that point, we're all really close friends. They would work extremely hard. I would pop in for the odd scene every couple of days, hot off the golf course or the beach or the pool. And, all I can say is, it takes everybody in the team to make a great team. And, Ioan was very fortunate to have such committed actors around him.
Sounds a little bit like me and Alex sometimes,
Yeah, pretty much. I'm Ioan, though, just for the avoidance of doubt. I just want to ask you quickly about, we were talking about the look on your face when you first go aboard. It's a Justinian, isn't it, in the first episode? The little ship in the channel.
That's right.
Yeah. You're playing 17. You were like 25, I think. I do like the way you played a completely green. Was that difficult trying to play teenage?
Well, you know what? I was a very late developer. I looked very young, I think. I looked very young even as a 23-year-old. So I think I barely sort of passed for a 17-year-old. Yeah. But no, that miserable face that I had was genuine because it was, I think it was -4 sort of wind chill, in the Crimea at that time. They were battering me with propellers, big giant, old fashioned aeroplane propellers, and chucking buckets of water in front of it, to create the rain effect. So I was properly like a drowned rat. I mean, exactly as it was described. So there was no real acting required.
Well, the scenes I remember about being cold and wet and in those clothes, that's when you talk about the historicity before any kind of waterproofing or anything like that. They're in woolen garments and leather soles running around these ships. That's why they had bare feet. I guess if you had to climb any rope or whatever, you wouldn't be in those shoes. And we were officers and obviously didn't climb too many ropes. But I remember a sequence that we did at the end of the first 2 films in Pinewood when we were in the tank doing a shipwreck sequence. We went every day to the tank in Pinewood. We'd start shooting when it got dark at about 10 at night, and we'd shoot until 4 in the morning when it got light. And we were drenched with wind and rain machines. And again, one of the moments I want to tip my hat to this guy, because you never lost it. You never lost it. We were freezing all night long, just totally wet, drowned rats. There was a wave machine and a massive water slide of I think it was several tons of water that would come down this huge ramp, and then it had an upshoot at the bottom, so the water launched into the air in massive volume, and then just twatted us. And it happened about 50 times a night. And then you just got warm and dry in some room, and they told you had to go out and do it again and again. And we did it for a week, every night.
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
In those costumes. And I've got to say, those sailors, they've got my respect.
Hard men.
Jamie, you mentioned the costumes. So tell us, what is your favourite or least favourite part of the naval uniform?
Well, I think they look amazing. I have to say, just aesthetically, I think they're the best military costumes I've ever worn, apart from that bicorn hat. I find that an impractical item of headgear.
Oh, Kate really hoping that you all nicked those when you left.
No, I don't have a hat. No. So, I love the breeches, love the frock coat, loved it, love the buttons, all very nice. The blouse, the stock, all great, all very fashionable, very adamant. I could do a numerantic and all of that stuff. Yeah. The hat, no. And then there were cardboard lines. So as soon as they got wet, they got soggy. Do you remember? And they would start drooping.
They started drooping, yeah.
Because obviously, I'm sure the real thing was a bit sturdier. But the hat, a bit goofy. But the rest,
yeah.
When they twisted round and they weren't side to side, but went forward back.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was there. That
much
was
more
okay.
attractive.
That was not a bad look. Yes.
Yeah, the either side of your ears sticking out. No, that's not a look, is it?
No, it's just like two big bison horns that you have to. I don't know.
Yeah, at every opportunity, though, those hats came off. You know, there was any excuse to bring them off in the scene. We would start the scene and then immediately find a way to take them off. Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about the ponytails, because I really hope that they were like Rodney Trotter style clip-ons that you all had.
No. Okay, so we're going back 25 years now. So it was the advent of the beginnings of hair extensions. And back then, the hair extension, you needed two people to put them in. And they were plastic wefts of hair.
I think it was called monofiber. Was it called monofiber? Something
That's
like
right, yeah, something like that. It was man-made. Yeah, it was man-made, wasn't it? It wasn't real hair. And then they had to be woven in individually. So each session to try and put this cue back in would be like, I don't know, an 8-hour job.
Yeah.
I mean, and we narrowed it down by the end of the last couple of episodes. They perfected the technique, but that first session, it almost killed me. And they kept falling out, of course, because of the conditions and the seawater. So there was endless. If I had a moment, a downtime, you know, I'd have a knock on the door from the makeup artist asking me to refill these.
Are they the moments when you almost did lose your shit then?
Yes, you're just having 10 minutes to yourself. Can we put some more?
There you go, Jamie. He's not perfect.
There was a massive upside to them, though. We had amazing mullets when you didn't have the clue tied in. Like amazing mullets. And I remember a couple of hair down nights where the hair was down and we looked like magic footballers from the early 70s.
Oh, brilliant. I was always, just make me feel better. You don't wake up with your hair sitting in curls like that. Tell me that they actually sat and curled your hair to make it look that good.
You know, well, 25 years ago, yes, my hair was a lot thicker, and when it gets long, it does get curly. I mean, I had the same hair on King Arthur as well. It just gets that lovely, beautiful curl. So they would put some in the front just to help, you know, accentuate it. But no, we would go that way, and especially in that sea air, it was the best thing for it. So I miss that.
You miss your mullet. Kate,
miss my curls and my mullet.
Yeah. Kate, we did mention that Ioan was playing 17, and it is said in the show, isn't it, that's old, really old for a midshipman to be starting out, isn't it?
Yeah, it's quite old. I mean, Nelson went to sea when he was 12, under his uncle. And so I'm actually looking at gunners in my own research, and I've got a lot of midshipmen who are very, very young, sort of 10, 11, 12-year-olds. And I think by the time that they had to go for their examination for lieutenant, they had to have 6 years experience at sea, 6 years sea time. So a lot of them joined quite young, as either sort of captain's servants or master's mates, and kind of worked their way up.
You had the little powder monkeys as well, didn't you? Were they?
Yeah, so I've actually got one of my gunners. His wife sent his son away to sea to become a powder monkey, and then he actually worked his way up, became a midshipman, which is quite a nice little story.
So Sean Bean and that, they got a 2-week crash course in Napoleonic warfare for sharp, where they literally had classroom sessions and everything.
Yeah, that's just crazy. So Baggers basically asked, did you guys get that kind of training on period naval warfare sailing?
We were meant to, weren't we? We were meant to go on a sail in the UK on a tall ship before we went out, and something went wrong. I think there was a plan to do that. Am I right? Yeah. The Astrid.
You know what?
A boat called the Astrid sticks in my head. That we were going to do a trip around the south coast from Portsmouth to somewhere before we started. Do you remember that?
Well, I don't. That you've got a much better memory than I. No, I don't remember that at all. We were supposed to go out, were we, and have a little jaunt and learn about it, and
we were meant
stay
to do
on
something. We were meant to do something, and it didn't.
Yeah.
Happen. It didn't happen. Did you have anything?
No.
Did you have anything special? Like,
no.
in boot camp?
Not that I can remember in terms of, no, I think I keep saying that it was a baptism of fire because I think we were just launched into this. I don't think we did have that much training. Maybe, and some of the stuff that we physically did, again, to bring it back to the actual filming, I mean, with the way the health and safety is set up now, we couldn't do half the stuff that we did, even 3/4 of it. You know, having actors, you know, row boats out at sea, in the middle of the sea, without divers or anybody in the water, diving into the sea from the deck of the Indy, into, you know, freezing cold water, and only been able to do it twice because it was so cold. You know, you completely
really
numb.
cold.
Yeah, properly cold. I mean, there were a few, I mean, every day was fraught with an element of danger in that sense. Just the simplest of things of getting on and off the boat in the mornings, you know, and some evenings you'd come in and there was a storm brewing and just tying the ship off. I mean, and we mustn't forget, on our show, that ship is called the Grand Turk. That ship was built purposefully for the series.
Yeah.
It was built out in Marmaris and then sailed across the Black Sea to the Crimea. And I remember talking to Andrew Benson, our fantastic producer, saying, you know, that was not to put any pressure on me, but he said when we were watching it come in across the horizon, he said, "That's for you, mate. That's for you. That £4 million ship there that we've just built, especially for this show, that's all for you. So don't fuck it up."
Yeah, no pressure.
Yeah.
That's incredible. I didn't know that it was actually built purposefully for the show. That's just, wow.
Yeah, it was.
It is extraordinary. Yeah, it was. I mean, and so let's imagine, right? We've all watched Game of Thrones, right? And that's one of. Okay.
Everyone
we've
except
heard of Game of
Alina
Thrones.
has seen it. Yeah.
But in terms of budgets, right? I don't know what the budget is on that show, but it's a very, very expensive, rich and delicious show. And we have to remember, at the time, Hornblower, the series, was the most expensive show ever made for British television, certainly, if not in America as well. It was a massive, massive co-production. Now, to look back at it, you know, you can see, you know, the early advent of CGI and what we could afford, but it was still a massively expensive show. And I remember talking to Delia Fine, who told us that when she saw Master and Commander, she said, well, one like 2-minute sequence of CGI was sort of the equivalent of an entire episode of Hornblower. I mean, that was the difference, you know, that was a big $100 million movie. But our show at the time was one of the most expensive shows ever made on television. So, and you can see it up on screen. I mean, I think, it still holds its own. And we shot for several days to make a lot of those action sequences. As Jamie said, endless. And the artistry of those models that we had.
They were amazing.
So there was a 7-meter long model, wasn't there, that they filmed some of the long shots on? Yeah.
Well, there were several models, because several of the ships, they had full naval battles in a tank the size of like a small park pond. And they had, I went down there a couple of times to watch, and they're creating the ripples of the water, they're creating the wind, they're creating everything, and the cannons are firing. There's very, very little CGI, and especially in the first 2 films. I'm not even sure how much there was at all. But they were orchestrating these big choreographed naval battles with real water, real models. There's very little trickery. A blue screen in the background was about all, so that's CGI. But it was in the early days of CGI. I remember we were talking about Titanic on the set and about how you put in breaths, didn't you, to create the cold look.
Yes, they had, yeah.
And I remember that blew my mind, that you could, at the time, that was so ahead of its, I mean, that was the first time it had ever been done. So we were right at the beginning of it, and we didn't have access to all of that. So it was practical. The whole show was basically, we did it. It was practical.
So the first series of Hornblower I think it's pretty much bang on made exactly the same time as Air Force One. And do you remember how rubbish the plane looks when it goes down at the end? You can tell it's a cartoon. That to me is always an illustration of how early days 1999, 2000 was for CGI. So the fact that you didn't have what Game of Thrones and even Master and Commander a few years later had, to have it all as practical. I'll just pause because Liz, do you want to come in? Because Delia's daughter's sitting in on our call, so it's up to you, Liz, if you'd like to come on. We have...
Hey, there she is. Hello.
Haven't changed at all.
We have actually, you've mentioned Delia Fine, and her daughter Liz is sitting in on the call because she was so excited we were getting together with you guys. So, this project meant a hell of a lot to your late mum, didn't it?
Yes, it really, really did. She loved the project so much. She was so passionate about it. She really loved the Forrester books and was so passionate about the entire time period, loved naval history, and was really a history buff herself. She loved the books, was a Master and Commander fan, and really was passionate about the entire series and felt that, it became her family as well.
You have lots of memories of being on set, don't you? And going to see her on set.
Yes, I was very lucky that she let me travel with her, and I got to spend some time visiting and tag along for a little bit. So kind of got to know and think of Ioan as a big brother of sorts.
Yes. Yes.
It's an incredible legacy that she's left us, and not only that, but I didn't know until a few hours ago when we were talking that she was behind Pride and Prejudice as well, which I remember getting booted out of the front room every Sunday night for that, so my mum could be alone with Colin Firth. But another one that's just like massively imprinted on people's hearts, isn't it?
Yes, who wouldn't want to be alone with Colin Firth?
She was a wonderful and welcome presence on the set, your mum, Liz, because it was a very male environment, very male. We didn't really have any actresses in the first 3 or 4 scripts. Male producer, male director. And I have to say that, her maternal instinct for this show was really needed and really welcome. And we would always look forward to your visits, because the love was just obvious for the material from her. And it was much appreciated by the cast. I know that.
Well, she really cared about each one of you, and she was so sorry to kill you off. Hornblower and Scarlet Pimpernel.
She killed you twice, apparently.
but she genuinely, I believed her when she said she was sorry.
Really sorry, Jamie.
I've been killed off many, many times, and she did it in a lovely way.
Oh, so Let's talk about villains, because one thing Hornblower gave us was an outstanding array of dastardly, horrible villains. So Simpson was first, that was Dorian Healy. So he was a pantomime villain, if ever there was one, wasn't he? Total shithousery for no reason whatsoever. I loved him. In The Frogs and the Lobsters, you had that snivelly French officer. Anthony Sher was brilliant, and he's not even remotely French, is he? He was a brilliant dirtbag. Don't think anyone was sorry when he got off by his own guillotine. Mutiny and Retribution, you had Hobbs, which is Philip Glenister. But I don't think he was one of the best wankers on television, but I think he wasn't a villain as such, was he? He came around in the end. And the same for David Warner, because there's another Titanic connection for you, because he sunk with it twice. But he was a sick old man, however much I wanted to kick him down the hatch myself in the end. And then, of course, you have Wolf in Loyalty, Duty, the Turncoat, and also Hammond the Elder as well. And Robbie McNiven wants to ask both of you who your favourite villain was in the series.
Wow.
David Warner, I love. I don't view him as a villain because he was obviously an early onset dementia.
Yeah, it's like a sad old man, isn't it?
Aged, yeah, he was obviously a legend in his day, but the colour that David brought to it, the pathos, even whilst he was being a terrible bully, you could see the terrified wounded pride that was behind it, and I saw the complexity of what he was,
and the fear as well. Do you not think he nailed that? Could not knowing what was happening to him.
Absolutely, and he's just a wonderfully compelling actor. You can't. He holds every shot so well. So for me, he would be mine, but not a villain.
No.
So Rachel also asks, because I'm actually interested, I want to know the answer to this. So it's strongly implied.
So does everyone, yeah. This question came in about 30 times.
So it's strongly implied that Horatio was the one who pushed Sawyer, but it's never been confirmed, of course, and Archie took the blame. Did the writers ever confirm to you actually did the pushing?
I always maintained that I did and that I had. For me as an actor, I needed to have that heightened sort of the stakes being that high that I had done it, and that I was getting away with it somehow, which then gives, that the ending, when Archie sacrifices himself, even though he's been shot himself and he's on his way out to sacrifice himself and sacrifice his honor. I think it sort of heightened the whole thing if I believed that I actually had done it, for the good of the ship and for the good of the crew. It just added that little frisson for me, to think that I had actually done it.
It's interesting as well, isn't it? Because I think the first 4 episodes, Horatio's just perfect. That's the first slip. And then he's much more complex in the last 2 because he's not actually likeable for a lot of them. He's struggling with a lot of authority issues and stuff. And I think that was the first time where you thought, oh, actually, he's not perfect. And I kind of like that because I want to just shove him down the hatch.
Mm-hmm. Yes, no, and I think if we have to play out that he actually did it, I think he's immediately regretful and on the back foot. And you're right, not necessarily likable or honourable, or he does all these amazing things, at the Spanish fort and everything, but and saves the crew in the battle. But in that case, no, I think he saw an opportunity and he took it, and he possibly regretted it.
And who was your favourite villain? Oh no, go on, Jamie.
Well, we shot it in such a way. But sorry, I've just seen a wonderful play, not before the lockdown in London, called On Blueberry Hill by Sebastian Barry, and I won't ruin it for anyone. But there's a similar moment in there where the character's recollecting something that he did in the past, which involves pushing, and I think we shot it certainly in such a way that it was ambiguous. And I think Hornblower, this is just for me as a viewer outside. This isn't what we were playing or what I really think. Hornblower is the kind of character that is so responsible for everything that he does, all his actions. He's very conscious of his own duty, his responsibility to certain situations. It doesn't actually matter whether he pushed him or not. The fact is that he was there when he fell. And the sense of blame that he maybe didn't stop him, maybe didn't, it's that kind of complexity, because that's enough to have been there, to have seen this guy in the dark, and we both were there and he didn't do anything to hold him back is enough. It's tantamount to pushing him. So, I mean, whether it was a physical push or whatever, it doesn't actually matter. He holds himself responsible for not having done enough. That's just my perspective outside. But clearly it was an issue between Hornblower and Sawyer, and I don't think Archie happened to be there, but it's not, the stakes for the protagonist of the show have to be that he feels that he was the one not to save his life.
And who was your favourite villain, Ioan?
I think the most dangerous, but I felt were probably with Dorian Helios Simpson and with Tony Sher. I think they brought a sense of real danger, and in their performances, especially Tony Sher, the way he's such a tremendous actor, and he's just on the border of being a pantomime villain.
Yeah.
But it's so delicious and delightful, and he's so charming, but incredibly dangerous, and obviously had lost control of
They're
everything.
both irrational, aren't they? I think that's why.
Yes, yeah.
Right, okay. Oh, let's go back to Heroes. So that first line from Robert Lindsay, "My name is Captain Sir Edward Pellew." What an intro. I know Kate adores the real Pellew. How good was Robert Lindsay? You said he was like a mentor. How good was he? I love him. I think he's brilliant in it.
Yeah, I mean, Robert Lindsay's, he's a towering figure within British television, theatre, film, and just for me to have been on that set and heard him deliver that speech, we were meant to be awestruck by being on the Indefatigable, a real ship of the line. This was our big opportunity. We're going to war, and then we got that huge rallying cry. There are two moments like that I can remember in my career, and that's one of them. The other one was on Battlestar Galactica, when Edward James Olmos gives a similar kind of speech to a beleaguered crew who are in a similar situation, and it was towering and delivered with the voice that a theatre actor brings, and it was very exciting. It was one of those days that I still remember what it feels like to stand there and the excitement.
How much did you learn from him, Ioan, as a young actor?
Oh, everything. It's hard to describe because I had done things before Hornblower, but to step into the shoes of a leading man for the first time at such a young age with such huge responsibility, he was a real mentor. He put his arm around me from the get-go and held my hand and taught me screen acting techniques, everything. And he was so generous and kind, and yes, a superstar. And I was in awe, and it helped that dynamic of that relationship. I mean, we had it for free because he was a young actor looking up to this extraordinary older actor, and experienced actor, and brilliant actor. So that always, the relationship you have off screen, I think, always informs the relationships on screen by osmosis. So that existed from the get-go. But I really, and he's incredibly naughty and funny, and so the more confident I became, the more relaxed he became. Being my mentor, he would, nod and a wink and show me his chewing gum that he was chewing and hiding, off camera. All these little silly little things to try and make me laugh or make me corpse. So, I mean, yes, I mean, if I had to count on somebody that was a massive, massive influence, he was that to me on the show.
Talking about Captain Pellew, Donna Doggett asks, Captain Pellew saw something special in the young Hornblower from the very beginning. He knew the young lieutenant would be a leader of men, wouldn't he? Yes.
I think that's the premise of that lovely relationship that we had. That it's almost like the son that he never had, the son that he always wanted. That kind of relationship, and I think he saw it very, very early on, and he had to stride the very fine line of discipline and the order of things, that he couldn't be seen to be, especially in this episode Retribution, he couldn't be seen to be defending Hornblower and his actions. He had to put on a sort of a neutral cap of the judge in that court martial, but behind those eyes there was a real terror for possibly having to send Hornblower to the gallows. I think he possibly saw himself or saw somebody better than himself in Hornblower and wanted to rear him and guide him through this career that he had chosen.
I do think my favourite moment is that moment, because if there's one thing Horatio is, it's a little bit dense sometimes, and there's that lovely moment at the end of one where Pellew is basically telling him that he's like a son to him, and Hornblower just doesn't get it. And he just ends it by saying, "You'll understand one day."
Yeah.
Yes. I love that you're calling him dense. That's so good.
With women as well, he was a little bit like...
Because he's British, he's emotionally inept.
Okay, so you've already mentioned the dangers of filming. You've already mentioned that rescue scene with the getting twatted in the face with the waves. I want to ask you about that. There's also as well the fire ship scene, which I love, but looked terrifying. And also I want to know that dive to save Paul McGann. Did you have to do it in one take? Because if not, that would have been a right pain in the arse to completely dry off before doing that again.
This would have been. I'm trying to place myself. And
I love this. You did so many heroic things. You can't even distinguish anymore. Course of 8 episodes.
I think that must have been done in a protective tank sort of environment, probably at Pinewood. That little sequence. Am I right, Jamie? Is that part of that week?
I honestly can't remember, because was that after I was dead, or?
Yeah, I think so.
I think it's the kind of thing you would have done yourself, yo. I think you'd have you'd have tapped the stuntman on the shoulder and said, "You're all right, pal. Go and get yourself a cup of tea. I've got him."
I'm trying to remember where that would have happened, and would have happened at sea, or would we have done it in a tank somewhere? Well, look, I mean, had that been the case, then yeah, we probably would have just dived in and done it, and just dried off and gone again. I mean, and listen, water, just an interesting fact, water on those Navy tunics, really show. So you could, I mean, the hair would get wet and you'd have to dry that off as much as you could. But you don't often see water on clothes on camera. Yeah. So you can get away with doing another take if you can get the hair dry. Interesting little factoid.
Yeah. With the fire ship sequence, I love that. That looked horrific. So I'm guessing some of that was models. How close to danger did you have to get with Dennis Lawson?
I mean, when it came to fire, obviously we would have had the special effects guys rig all that stuff, and you can put flames in front of the lens to make it look as if we're immersed within those flames, So when it comes to fire, I mean, that we probably would have been very, very safe, because we were probably doing it on a pre-built set that we wanted to preserve. So there's nothing gung-ho about working with fire on film.
Kate, what was the reality of fire ships? How much damage do they actually do historically? Is that a used tactic a lot?
So they were used a lot in the Anglo-Dutch Wars, actually. I don't think there were that many by the sort of 18th century. I think there were sort of 5, 6, 7, something like that. And they'd have kind of like a skeleton crew that sailed them, because they were quite small ships generally. One of them would always be a gunner. I've actually got the instructions on how to make a fire ship if anyone feels so inclined while they're on lockdown to here's one I made earlier. But yeah, they're actually quite difficult things to rig up. I didn't realise this. I thought you just set fire to a ship and then stuck the wheel on and set it off.
Yeah.
But the guys kind of stayed on board till the last minute and then locked it off. But the gunner would rig chains and a fuse and rope and everything to kind of get it to spread throughout the entire ship as quickly as possible. It was actually quite a clever thing to do. And most of the ships that kind of exploded at the time, I think Queen Charlotte's probably the one I can think of off the top of my head, were from things like accidental fires. So obviously, if you've got a ship that's made of wood, it's going to catch fire incredibly quickly. So I mean, they were quite damaging, I guess, if you were to put them into the middle of a fleet. But I don't think they ever actually kind of caused any huge significant naval victory. They were just kind of a nice thing to have. And certainly, yeah, I think the last time we used one was 1809.
Yeah.
What sort of ship would they use? Because surely those ships are very expensive to build. You'd not really want to burn too many up, would you? Or
I mean, some of them were actually purpose-built. So some of the gunners that I'm researching for my own research, actually, they joined the ship when it was commissioned, and a lot of them joined HM fire ship X, Y, Z. Really? Some of them were actually built as specific fire ships. I don't know that all of them were used, but it's definitely an interesting thing to look at.
This question's come in from Zach White, who was our historian on the Sharp one we did. Basically, it transpired in that Sean Bean took everything that wasn't nailed down with him when they finished filming, and he wanted to know if you've got any cool souvenirs. And this is the point where Kate was hoping that you'd at least have run away with one of those hats.
Yeah, I'm disappointed.
I think the only thing that I kept was, I was given by the armourer, was a sword. Not the dress swords, that goes with the uniform, but a practical sort of chunky black sort of metal sword. So I think that's the only thing really, and anything else that I have or have been given, I think I've donated and signed my name to them all. So I couldn't even dig out the DVDs to do my research for this, because I realised I think I'd given them all away, or they're in storage somewhere. But yeah, that was the only thing. It was the sword.
Jamie?
Yeah, I don't know if I have anything. Maybe one of my black little hair ties to keep my mullet in shape. I seem to have had a few of those lying around, I think, at some point. I tell you what,
your teenage daughters would have made off with those long ago.
Yeah, they probably are, yeah. The one thing I have, which is very special from the show, is a fan doing something for Galactica years and years later. A fan presented me one day with the original continuity book that makeup artists keep from the first 2 films that we did. So, and in those days it was all Polaroids. And so every time you did a scene, just to get the state of the makeup for each character. So you've got a script essentially with a couple of blank pages between every page where they stick in Polaroids, of all the characters in every scene, so that you could see who was in what shape at what point, so you could match it when you came back to it at a later date. So it's essentially a picture book of the first 2 scripts. Again, they're in storage somewhere because I've moved house from LA to France to now in London, and we don't have any room here. So they're in a box somewhere, but it's a wonderful, wonderful object, which I will always treasure, because it is the real document. You can see people making funny faces, photobombing each other behind these Polaroids. So that's the thing that's most special for me.
It's funny watching Ioan's changing face in that. First there was terror. First it was wow, then it was terror. Oh my God, what do I look like in some of those pictures? And then it was just like, I really need to see these.
I should show you one day if I ever dig it out. It's big enough.
I'd love to see that.
Around, but yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah, can I make a point on that, on the aspect of the continuity of things? And this is a testament to what the script supervisor does. On the second season, when we were in, was it Portugal, or then we went to Menorca? Anyway, when we were in Menorca, we didn't sail at all. We built a ship that was surrounded by a 270-degree view of the ocean. And we built the ship, facing forward. And then we shot all the scenes on the ship facing that way, right? If you can imagine that. And then halfway through that shoot, we went off and did some other sort of locations whilst they turned the ship around to have the stern of the ship facing the sea. So then we'd come back and do all those scenes all over again. But the camera could look, to the stern of the ship instead of the bow. So that's a testament to the script supervisor having to keep all that, written down and in her head to remind us when we came back to shoot the reverses of those scenes that we'd done weeks previously.
Yeah.
That it was all there and kept and logged for us.
Good memory.
That's amazing.
I forgot that. That's extraordinary. Because that was all the reaction to the real boat being out all day. And they worked out that maybe this was actually a false economy and that we should build a land-built set. But that was the flip side, is that you had to do things like that. And we had to pretend to be moving. So you'd have the first AD saying, everybody tilt left, everybody tilt right. And we had to match his movement because obviously we were on a perfectly level playing field.
I was going to ask you how much swaying you did on dry land to make it look like you were at sea.
Well,
not much.
Not at all for the first 2 because it was all real. But after that, that's all we did, apart from on very small boats if we were out actually on the water.
Yeah. And then the camera operator had a mini jib arm. So the camera was on this jib arm, and then he would sort of bend his knees and go down with the jib and back up very gently throughout every take. I mean,
Steve Murray, who I've just spent a whole year with. Steve Murray was the name of our camera operator, A-Camera, who did all that amazing work. And he still remembers Hornblower as one of his favorite gigs of all time. For all those reasons.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, the inventiveness and how practical we had to be on a daily basis to to make this look real. And ironically, I think perhaps it looked like we were sailing more in those episodes where we were on dry land than when we were actually physically sailing, because, you know, the medium is film, and it's much easier to control the environment on dry land than it ever was to actually physically be sailing, you know.
Yeah. So the Sharp guys are messing you with the business. He wants to know who would win in a fight, Sharp or Hornblower. Adam's asking this because he's in this reenactment group and he smugly thinks that Sean Bean would kick your ass. But I'm going to say that I'm going to go with Ioan purely for the fact that, because whenever it really gets tight with Hornblower, the ship's guns open up on the beach or whatever. Whenever there's 60 Frenchmen running at him, the boat will take care of it. So I'm going Hornblower. Sorry, Adam. What do you reckon, guys?
I mean, in a physical battle, I mean, you know, no swords, no anything. Yes, I would grant Sean Bean a victory there.
But 4 hands of whist, I think you've got him.
Absolutely, yeah. Oh, that was brilliant that you turned out to be a consummate gambler, because everybody was like, what is Hornblower? He wouldn't gamble. No, it was great. The argument, so my funniest moment that makes me crack up laughing, and I think Kate agrees with me, is the argument between Charles Hammond, and the other guy, the other Irish guy in the boat after the fire ship scene, where they literally end. This has spawned a Hornblower drinking game. I don't know if you know this, but, the Hornblower drinking game is every time someone says the word sir, you have to drink, because those guys were like, well, you've offended me, sir. Well, I admire your perspicacity, sir. And they just kept going and going and going at each other. So it's now a drinking game. But what was what's the funniest moment in them for you?
Oh, gosh.
It's a tough one, isn't it? Because there's so much that's sort of full of gravitas and serious, and there's always so much at stake, that those two just being silly. Do you know what other bit I love? You know where, I can't remember, his hunter bashes up his paddy with the fruit basket when you're all in prison, and Sherry Lundy brought you, she brought you a fruit basket, and he just kept wailing on it till all the fruit was dead. That was quite funny as well.
Oh, I know the funniest bit. The funniest bit is when I'm supposedly starving myself to death and Ioan has to pick me up in the rain, and you can basically see through my sodden shirt that I'm quite a chunky lad.
Yeah, do you know what? I'm just fast forwarding down our list of questions.
Oh, Ioan, take 3. He was like,
It's brilliant. You can see the strain on his face. Jamie, you obviously had to look pathetic and couldn't help, and Ioan looked like he was struggling.
I had to look 20 lighter than I was. It was a terrible job of doing.
Ioan was pathetic in his attempts to hold up 180
how many takes
pound
did it take?
hunk of meat.
Did you have to do more than one take? Were you like doing a day of carrying him back?
Oh,
it was basically a day of biceps for Yo. He was just after this day. And the
forearm
was the last one of the day, and I was wringing wet as well, to be fair to him.
It was Kristin Mara, thank you for that question. Yeah, she said it didn't look easy. But yeah, that has not gone unnoted by everyone else.
Sorry. So Leanne Havis wants to know what Ioan and Jamie remember as their fondest memory on set. And there's also a question on top of that where Karen asked what was the worst. So you got the best and the worst.
Well, I think probably the favourite times that we had, we probably can't mention really on a podcast. Specifically on set.
Yeah.
On set.
The adventures that we had off set. Oh my goodness.
Well, you know, the Sharp guys obviously filmed in the Crimea as well, so they have told tales about how it was basically like Dodge City, and that they had to make their own fun, and a few of them admitted this morning to being completely ratted most nights. So
there wasn't a lot to do there.
Did you go to Yalta Market? They seem to have bought a lot of useless crap at the Yalta Bazaar.
Well, there wasn't much there. I think they took it all.
Sean Bean bought a hammer for £0.50, and someone was going on about a gondola. Did you inherit anything from the bazaar?
No, I think I bought a loaf of bread and a potato. It was all I could find there because I No, it really was an insight into what people, after the system had just vacuumed away all the wealth and it was all in the hands of organised criminals by the time we got there. There was nothing. There was really nothing to buy. Because I wasn't going to work every day like Ioan, and I had to fend for myself. There was nothing to buy food-wise. It was really quite bleak at that point. But I do have a memory on set. The one for me, the time when we climbed to the very top of the topsail. Do you remember? Out at sea in Portugal, we had a helicopter with old Steve Murray on his gimbal in the helicopter, flying around us as we were under full sail. And it was the only time we ever went to the very, very top. And, the boat, the ship, I should say, would pitch and you'd be over the water. You wouldn't be over the deck anymore. And, for me, that was my first, again, I'd done a few other things in that time, but very little. It couldn't get more exciting than that at that time. So that was one of those days.
That came in as a question, actually. Did you actually go all the way up there for that shot?
Yeah. We
did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's a testament to what we were able to achieve, back then with the resources and the nature of filmmaking, that we actually physically went up there. Yes, we had a harness to tie ourselves off. But no, we were literally up there, bobbing back and forth. It was really exhilarating.
And I remember the helicopter couldn't get the gimbal on the helicopter couldn't get close enough to get a tight close up of you, could it? Because it was moving too much. And in those days, the technology wasn't there. Nowadays, they can get a drone up and it can be as still as you like and it can come right in. In those days, with a helicopter, so they had to then cut to you up a ladder in Pinewood, didn't they? With your face in front of just the sky, and to do the close up that finally punched the show off it, didn't it?
Yes, I think they erected a sort of a green screen and just that little element of the topsail at the last bit, and then sort of wind machine and pretending, that last little bit. But no, it's actually Jamie and I up there, for sure.
Brilliant. Gemma from Jamie Bamber fans, they're really enthusiastic. They absolutely love you. She says,
I won't have a bad word said about them. God bless both of them.
She is lovely. She said, I've always found the exchange between Archie and Horatio when Horatio is trying to get Archie well again in The Duchess and the Devil interesting. It's the first hint of any real animosity between them. Do you think Archie's jealous or just he's insecure and it's all coming to a head? And she says, also, I appreciate you won't have time. I just wanted to personally thank Jamie for bringing Archie to life so beautifully. The way he pushes through his anxieties and insecurities and comes out stronger has been a major influence in helping me deal with my own.
Well, I think Gemma's answered the question. I think Archie's insanely envious of his more talented naval swashbuckling friend, and insecure, and very aware that he's a liability at certain moments, and he lets him down. And there's that guilt and self-loathing that comes with not being the person that you wish you could be. And I think that's what happens. And there's a couple of moments when he almost dies. Well, he did die and then got brought back. And then, he wants to die in that prison. And then, of course, in the end, he's able to have his wish, and he does die and does the one thing he's proud of. Archie's he's not he's blessed with all the enthusiasm. He's like a Labrador, he's really enthusiastic, but when it comes right down to it, he just doesn't have what it takes to keep calm and have a cool head when it matters. He's not meant to be a leader of men.
I think you see him gradually realising that as well in the episodes you're in. But I did, you know what, I can't remember how old I was. I was a very young teenager, I think, when this first came out, and I thought you died in the first one. And when you came back, the relief, the absolute relief.
Well, I did. No, but you were right. I did die, and I was meant to die.
So they had actually written you out after you got cut adrift by Simpson in the first one.
Yeah. And then I don't know how much of this is true, and actually Liz might know more than me about this, but I was told. After the read-through, the very first read-through we did, apparently something that I did at the read-through, which is extremely surprising to me because mostly they're horror shows, convinced them that they wanted to bring me back. And I think it might have been Andrew Grieve. I'm not sure. But at that point, when I was cast, it was to play a character who died after the first episode. Yeah,
I mean, we're all glad you did come back.
Oh, so right. Gosh. I mean, Ioan is obviously a very, very close friend and has been ever since and always will be, but he's not the only one. Sean Gilder, another actor that I just saw the other day, who played played Styles.
Yeah.
Paul Copley I haven't seen in a few years, but again, we used to live around the corner. Phil Glenister I played golf with in London. We're all still very close, and you don't forget your first time, and it was mine, and I never will forget it. It's very special to me, and I still think back very, very, very fondly.
They're all great actors. We were just coming on to them actually to talk about Hornblower's division, because Styles and Matthews, you work with them on all episodes as well. And someone specifically asked if you got Sean Gilder his role in King Arthur, but what were they like to work with?
Well, this is who Sean is as a friend, as Jamie has just described. So on the first night in Yalta, in the Crimea, before we've even started filming, we all had a sort of a drinks gathering, and I was sat alone because I didn't really know anybody. And he came over, sat next to me, put his arm around me, and he said, "You must be shitting yourself, right?" and I thought it was one of the most generous acts that a fellow actor can do, is to spot somebody who's playing the lead. Come over and say, "Listen, don't worry about it. We've got you back. We're going to look after you." And so from the get-go, we were a tight band of brothers. Sean, Aldroyd, Simon, playing Aldroyd, Paul Copley, and I, we were together, almost every day. I mean, that they were Hornblower's crew, and then alongside Archie and Bush. So you can imagine, I mean, two actors who are brilliantly comedic actors, have impeccable timing, superb with drama, but all the comedy elements, I mean, that's just Sean and Paul riffing off one another and bouncing off one another and bringing those characters to life. They were, amazing for a young actor like myself to stand opposite that and just react rather than having to create anything. They were just giving me so much on a daily basis. And we got to the point where we were able to improvise some moments together. I mean, that scene that Jamie described earlier about the audition scene where Styles and Allroyd and Matthews are all sort of huddled away, gambling on a rat fight or something, I think it was.
Yeah.
We were able to improvise some moments in that actually made it to the screen. And there was a lot of admiration and respect between us as actors, and I think that reflected itself as the characters then, the status that Hornblower had to play a very young boy, sort of ordering about these older, burly, stronger men.
So in the Frogs and the Lobsters, you have a love angle, which doesn't quite feature in the books. Do you think the series actually needed it? Because I know Alex doesn't.
No, just give me more guns and explosions and battles and stuff.
You need a bit of love, come on.
I know Kate agrees with me, just more fighting. Yeah.
I'm not a military historian, so
but
unfortunately,
to be fair,
they
did you proud, Ioan. They gave you the girl from the Papa Nicole from the Citroen advert.
I was going to say, there was a bit of excitement when we heard who was cast.
Yeah, was she not? Like I said, I was very young at the time, and I do remember that every man alive was in love with her.
Yes, we were. It was so exciting. I mean, it was part of British culture, wasn't it? I mean, she was ridiculous. Yeah.
So everyone, you only had to say those two words, and everyone knew exactly the girl you were talking about.
Yeah.
Without knowing the name, it was mad.
Oh, God bless television. May she rest in peace. Yeah. Where we used to know what commercials were on, and we still do 25 years later. Yeah, it was good.
Yeah.
But we had Sherry Lungi as well. We had Embarrassment of Riches.
She was brilliant, wasn't she?
Yeah.
I couldn't figure it out till right at the end whether she was crooked or not. And I don't think you could see Hornblower couldn't either. It was great. He just looked baffled by her.
Yes. No, you're right. An embarrassment of riches. I mean, just, just on a personal note, as a young actor, you can choose to think that you know it all. as a young actor, or you can choose to learn and to observe and to watch everything that's going around you. And from my vantage point, as the lead in the show, I was able to see everything that was going on. And instead of dismissing it all, I sort of lapped it all up and drank it all in, and learned so much so quickly. So it really was a sink or swim experience. So then when you're surrounded by, tremendous actors, you can, forego being jealous or envious of them and actually learn from them. And I'll never forget this experience, as long as I shall live.
Just speaking of actors that you got to work with, this guy, Paul McGann has had more mentions on History Hack than Adolf Hitler so far because of, it's mad, because of the Sharp lot are constantly referencing him, because he obviously was supposed to be Sharp, wasn't he? And it was so sad listening to the story of the day that he did his leg and everything. And then I totally forgot he was in Hornblower until I binge watched last weekend, and I was like, oh, it's a happy ending. He got to be in that. He was brilliant, wasn't he?
He's great. Paul is a true artist and a gentleman and multi-talented dude. Remember him, he'd be cycling up like 200 miles at the weekend on his day off. He would go off on his bike and he's super fit, Paul, as well. That Sharp accident, I listened to a bit of that podcast just to get my head in the right space. And, that must have really heartbroken him, because, he is an athlete. He is someone who's very strong and very fit physically. And for him to get an injury like that and not be able to pull his weight, I'm sure it really...
Oh, they were saying as well that there was no one near him. He went down and nobody knew how.
Football on the beach, see.
Yeah.
But we were thrilled to have him. I'm a huge Withnail and I fan, and I just worked with Richard E. Grant. And then I got to work with the man himself. So, I was giddy with excitement to meet Paul, and we met in the departure lounge at Heathrow and then got on a plane. First time I'd ever flown business class, I remember. And we got struck by lightning, 5 minutes after takeoff. And the whole plane had the moment, and, the rest, is for history, because we just thought we'd just dodged a bullet and we got tucked into the, free boost. So that was my introduction to McGann. McGann was great. I loved him, even though, it was, he sort of represented the end of my character's journey. I knew that this was coming to an end because, he was taking over as Bush, who's obviously hugely important in the novels. But I learnt tons from him, watched his work, and just, as a person, he's, very gentle, soft-spoken, warm, cheeky, glint in the eye all the time, presence, and a lovely man.
Now, what's lovely about Paul as well, because he's renowned for, his character in Withnail and I, he didn't shy away from quoting the movie with us. He must get it every day of his life, and he got it every day of his life on our show, but he would quote it with us, and he would delight in it with us. So he never made us feel that we were imposing on him. Oh God, I've heard that one before. He just enjoyed it every single time. He was so generous.
But he would actually do all the other lines as well, the other characters. Do you remember he would do the Camberwell carrot speech? He would do the whole lot. He'd do the whole film.
Mutiny and Retribution, where we do get William Bush come in, and they're Jamie's last episodes. I love them because they have a completely different feel about them. It's all suspense and claustrophobia, as opposed to swashbuckling and wide open spaces and seas. It's all very confined on the ship, and you get to feel claustrophobic and trapped by it. I thought they were brilliant.
They were certainly my favourites. I mean, I didn't obviously have the journey that Ioan did, but they were certainly my favourites. I enjoyed the cast, the chemistry that we had at that particular time with Glenister as well, another wonderful actor to have around. And we were in a lovely part of the world. It was summer, and it was gorgeous. And you're right, that sense of us all being in this awful situation with this man who's losing his wits at the helm, and the whole thing could go down. The tension was just there all the way through. And I think when you do get that sense of there's no escape, there's no way out of this situation, and we're in the middle of the Atlantic, sailing all the way to St. Vincent or wherever we were going. There's no land. There's no escape. You can't. It's like being in space.
we can't talk about those 2 episodes without talking about the simplest gift, because all the questions were about it. Archie's death scene. So Loz Talks wants to know, can you ask Ioan and Jamie how they felt about Archie's death and what it was like to film it? I've always felt that part of why Archie is so beloved is because of his heroic sacrifice, and it's immortalised into the thanks. And then somebody else that they have as well asked how you felt, both of you, about Jamie being written out, and didn't it have something to do with Forrester's estate because it wasn't in the books, or I don't know. That was what one of them referenced.
Well, I mean, there wasn't any real acting required really for those scenes because, it resonated for us both. Jamie and I are best mates, and we met on the show, and it's very much part of our lives and our upbringing as young actors. So that had a very significant moment. It was a very significant moment for us both. So all those tears and sadness and everything, it was effortless, really. It just all came very naturally to us. Even though that was on a sound stage, that was a set that was built. I don't think we were out in Menorca.
No, we were in Fulham Palace. It wasn't a sound stage. It was in Fulham Palace.
Yeah.
But you're, absolutely right. Anytime, and it's happened to me a couple of times. Anytime you leave a television show, is not like a film. You actually develop relationships. You become a family. You become very close. And anytime you say goodbye, and anytime a writer does something for you where you get to lay down your life so that the lead character then can continue, it's really, there's no effort required. You've just been given a gift, a simple gift, and you take it. And I love working with Ioan, and it was sad for me as a person, because I knew the show may have continued to this day. There's so many novels, you could have kept making it. But I always knew that Archie's shelf life was not going to be that, because of just the nature. I'd taken this character from a few mentions in one novel, so I'd had my run. It was very special. I remember one thing about that day though, and a wonderful Welsh actor played David Warner's first lieutenant.
Nicholas Jones. Yeah.
Nick Jones, yeah. I have him to thank because, and this is another example of being a young actor on a set, and when you have the stage like that, when I had to walk down the middle of the trial to give evidence. And he came up to me after we did a rehearsal, and he said to me, Jamie, he's very soft-spoken and very nice. He said, you might want to fall halfway through. You might lose your footing, stumble so that you can't keep going. Just something to show us that this is taking everything from you to get up. And I was like, you know what? That was really, really generous and really, really giving, because what he did is he gave me the confidence to try something that I don't think I would have had the guts to do at that point. And it's one of those things, one of those lessons that once you learn as an actor, this is my stage, this is my moment, and it's up to me to make the most of it. And sometimes as a young actor, you read the script, you read the stage directions, and you think, well, I'm just going to do what I've been told to do here. And the director doesn't always have the time to help you out with these things. But this was a real gift from an actor who was watching me going, this moment is so important, and this young actor could do with something else to make our hearts break for him at this particular moment. He gave me this little tiny thing, and it's never left me. So every time I find myself in a situation like that, you go, no, there's only this story. I have it at the moment, and I can do whatever the hell I think is appropriate with it. And then, when you've got a set of a couple of hundred people, and it's a big budget thing, it takes some guts sometimes to do that, especially when you're very young. But Nick Jones, thank you.
Let's talk about loyalty and duty. So, Kate, how miserable was life for officers on half pay like Horatio? Is it the beginning of those?
So they usually went on to half pay in peacetime. But I think by the end of the Napoleonic Wars, there was something like 500 captains who didn't have a ship, which is crazy when you think about it. and they just didn't have anything to do with them. So they were either waiting to go to sea, or they'd just commissioned and they just got stuck on this half-pay list. And it was like, well, this is where you're going to be for the rest of your life.
They shouldn't have had all those fire ships and burnt them all up.
Burning the money away. And for lieutenants, I think it was probably quite difficult because they were on lower pay anyway. I think it was kind of generally frowned upon for them to sort of get married and have families that young because they just couldn't afford it. And so when they went on to this half pay, it was even more of a struggle, which I think is depicted quite well, especially when Bush turns up and they're helping each other out, I think.
Thank God you were good at whist.
Yeah. The thing is as well, I think when you're on half pay, you could apply for postings, but you didn't always get them, and you'd sometimes be given them. But if you then refused that posting, it was kind of a case that, well, this is all you've got, this is what you've got, take it or leave it. But if you left it, then it wasn't really that good for your advancement and promotion in the future because you kind of turned down your opportunities, I guess.
Pretty much like being an actor. You know, there's about 5 million actors in the world and only 3 movies. And if you turn it down, then they don't come back to you.
Yeah.
Very similar. No wonder we were so good at that, Ioan.
Guys, if it's okay with you, there's like 3 or 4 more questions. Is that all right?
Yes. Yeah, please.
Okay. So we already mentioned a little bit further back, and these are the ones where Horatio is perhaps least likable for the fans, because he's clearly struggling with his new responsibilities across the board in the last 2 episodes. And I love how this plays out with Mariah. Julia Sawalha is just fantastic anyway. By the way, Ioan, what a naff proposal. He went from being mildly embarrassed by her at the beginning of the first episode to proposing to her. But to be fair, I don't think it's a coincidence that his doubts coincide with her suddenly beginning to start calling him Horry at every opportunity.
Better than horny.
This is true, yeah.
Yep.
That was quite a leap for the character, wasn't it? Because he'd been pretty asexual until that point, hadn't he? Because he's just too busy with his career.
Yes, yeah. I mean, he's sort of hopeless when it comes to those sort of situations. And I'm not sure if it was necessarily art imitating life, but yeah, I mean, being a young man, those sort of earnest sort of moments that he had, you know, they came quite easily to me. But I do remember when he then got given, I think it was the Commodore, wasn't it? His first, I distinctly remember as an actor then, going from somebody who was being given orders and having those scenes with Robert Lindsay at the end of every episode, sort of to tie the episode up, and sort of biting my tongue for the entire series, to now giving orders. And it was a very uncomfortable position to be in as an actor. Suddenly you thought you were going back to do another series and this is how it's going to feel, and it's going to feel comfortable and fun and great and I know what I'm doing, and suddenly, oh no, this is a new sensation. I'm the one giving orders to everyone. So I had to embrace that as an actor. Okay, this feeling of being uncomfortable is real. This is what Hornblower is feeling. He is feeling uncomfortable in this position. So embrace it and enjoy it. So it always, I don't know, that whenever you feel a character and you sometimes feel uncomfortable, you've got to run with it and enjoy it rather than fight against it and try to make it feel more comfortable, because that's what the intention is, I think. Yeah.
No, I think it was done very well, because you were cringing with Horatio, I think, for most of those 2 episodes.
Yes. It was,
But do I remember rightly that the proposal comes from, and I think I quote, a misplaced sense of duty, the proposal of marriage? That doesn't Hornblower think she's obviously got the idea that I'm meant to propose? You don't feel anything for her, but it's that duty that you think it's expected of you, therefore you have to do it. I think that's what's in the books. Somebody else.
Paul McGann tried to talk you out of it, I think, or tried to tell you don't have to do this for these reasons.
Yeah, but it's in Forrester. Forrester says he makes the proposal out of a misplaced sense of duty. I'm remembering something from 20 years ago.
I see.
This is why I'm annoyed that they stopped them there, because I'd have loved to have seen what happened next. And Liz is not well.
So, guys, V.E. Ross asks, which of Horatio's promotions from the end of each film is your favourite?
I think that came at the end of the one in France. I think, wasn't it was it the Wrong War? I think it came at the end of the Wrong War. That was
the Frogs and the Lobsters in the UK, wasn't it?
Oh, that's right. Sorry, I keep getting the title.
No, so it was renamed for the Americans.
No, was it?
Yeah.
Oh, I see. So, yes, because Hornblower's pretty cut up about his relationship and losing Mariette. And I think he's so emotional about it. I think that's why he also can't, and he didn't understand what we were doing there because we weren't supposed to be there. So he questioned his orders that had come from Pellew. So I think he was sort of distracted by that at the same time. But yes, he was always so earnest about these moments, wasn't he?
You did have as well. You did that emotion of trying that process her death in the perfectly British, emotionally stunted way with just a lip quiver.
Yes.
Jamie's nodding like, yeah, I've used the lip quiver.
Yep. Is there any other way? Yeah. Is there any other way?
No. Can't, you can have wet eyes, but we don't want to see tears.
No tears.
Yeah, you had wet eyes and a lip quiver. It was spot on.
Yeah.
Samantha wants to know, how do you feel looking back at roles from early on in your careers like this, having both played historical and sci-fi superhero roles and everything in between? Does your approach to the part change with the genre, and do you now have a preference?
Personally, the approach doesn't change. No, I mean, the genre doesn't affect the way you approach character or performance. I mean, I suppose there are heightened genres, but I haven't really done those. Mine have tended to be, and even when I did sci-fi, it was brutally realistic and very much to be played for the reality of the situation. So no, not really. The variety is what makes our career so rewarding when it works out right, changing from different kinds of period, from small screen to big screen to stage, all those things are great. But no, I mean, Hornblower, as I said earlier on, will always have a very special place in my heart, not because it was necessarily the biggest role that I've ever had, but the first and an introduction, wonderful introduction to filming and we were working on film, real film, that you had to change the can every whatever number of feet, and there were hairs on the gate and things went wrong and you had to reshoot them because the film was overexposed or went missing at one point. Just stuff like that. Very special. But no, in terms of sci-fi or historical stuff, or I've done a lot of military stuff, I suppose, over the years. Hornblower, definitely best frocks, best outfits.
I was going to say, because Ioan goes from those frock coats to a lycra catsuit for the Fantastic Four. That's quite a leap, isn't it?
Yeah.
But did you have any idea when you were fishing Kate Winslet out of the water that you'd end up being like front and center on superhero films? Like when they first, because now they do them all the time, but that was quite novel then, wasn't it? Doing a comic book one.
No, it was novel. And, to go back to what Jamie said about the process is always the same. But what's interesting, the idea of being seen in those costumes, I think the way my face is constructed, especially back then, I think lent itself to period costume dramas. I did several of them. And I think at the end of RADA, we had an evening where you were able to present like 2 minutes or 4 minutes speech. And I had dressed up in a red tunic, a British officer on man, for a speech from Translations, Brian Friel's play. And I think that was the first time people saw the potential in a young actor. Oh yes, he looks great in a costume. So I think from then on, a lot of those, I didn't have any agents interested in me until they saw me doing that speech. And then they went, oh, here we go. And then quickly followed by, Hornblower and Pip in Great Expectations. So I was in and out of period costumes for a long time. And then, that lycra suit that we had to pull on that took about 45 minutes to put on every day, because they had a muscle suit underneath.
Don't admit that.
Even Chris Evans had the muscle suit underneath, all right? Yeah. No, I don't know. What's interesting and wonderful as well about having played Hornblower, it has followed me every single day of my life since then, and I'm so proud and excited when anybody comes up to me who have fallen in love with the character, perhaps as a young child sitting on their father's lap or whatever, now still remembering those moments that they shared together, watching these young men, go to war essentially.
Yeah.
And just, I've done a few of those comic book conventions where you go and sign autographs or sign your pictures, and Hornblower is the biggest seller still.
Yeah.
Wow. To these Comic Cons, you go to these Comic Cons for, Mr. Fantastic, or you get invited because of Mr. Fantastic, but I take my Hornblower ones and they're the ones that sell out the quickest. So, it's very rare, in an actor's career that you get to be known for one specific part. And I've been so lucky. I'm known for a handful of parts. So, but I'm so proud that Hornblower is on top of that list.
I will touch in a second on where it ended and why we're all sad, but I scuffed off all the Battlestar Galactica questions that were coming in from the sci-fi nerds for Jamie. But I left one because it's so audaciously worded like an exam question. I just thought you'd love to answer it. Phil wants to know, what are the similarities in day-to-day life for an officer on the Indefatigable and the Galactica?
You can't get off either. You drown or you explode. So the truth is about both this is funny that we were shooting Galactica in Vancouver for 5 years, and who shows up in his muscle suit but Ioan, who's shooting on the same set. So we went all the way across the other side of the world, and and we were still side by side. So the Galactica and the Indefatigable and wherever Mr. Fantastic hang out are all linked. We were all together, but yeah.
Okay, so Hornblower finished in 1803, agonisingly 2 years before the Battle of Trafalgar, with Horatio just being promoted to post captain and about to become a father. And of course, every other question that came in for you guys was about the fact that people want more. Karen Marshall says, would you want to try and continue the story of Horatio Hornblower? Ioan?
Absolutely. I mean, I think I was, as devastated as anybody when we sort of stopped making them. I think it was an interesting time. Because I think, maybe Liz can correct me, that there came a point where reality television had come into play and had come into our world. And I think for A&E as a network, I'm not sure if they continued to do any sort of original dramas or be part of original dramas at the time. I'm not sure if that was one of the reasons. Perhaps, because it was such a big show, we needed two networks, across the Atlantic to be able to make it to the level that we want to make it. But look, it's, I've had very, very preliminary conversations with ITV, especially after having done Liar. I was able to go in and sit down with them and told them directly that, it would be amazing to, even if we picked up one or two books and amalgamated them to make a one-off special, because in order to do it in this day and age, it would be, a big, expensive undertaking. But the passion is there. I mean, I love the character. I love the books. I mean, it would be extraordinary to do it all over again.
It would be. And you're fine. You're basically a vampire. You don't age at all. You look 5 minutes older than 2003. I've got three options to shoehorn Jamie into a reboot, right? So you can pick which one we would go for. One is flashbacks, but I feel that this might be a problem because Jamie's obviously now developed rugged, manly, good looks because Archie looked very, very young, didn't he? So they have to shelve the flashbacks. Archie's ghost, a PTSD-based conversations. That gives you lots of creative license because Jamie can just turn up anywhere on a boat and you can talk to him. But all round, I think the best option is a Bobby Ewing scenario where Horatio wakes up after duty and finds out that death never happened. It was just a terrible nightmare. What do you reckon?
Or
option 3. I like option 3.
Yeah.
Or aliens land and I come off the alien ship and I've been abducted.
Yes.
Could
There
be.
you go.
Liz,
There
you're
you
in
go.
production. What do you think?
Proper mashup.
Oh, I mean, that's a really tough call.
I think I'll just sit on the sofa and watch. How about that?
What if you would still want to hang around while they were filming, right?
Oh, I would annoy them, yeah. I was going to drop in.
Hey, it's me again.
I'd drop in on a Friday night and steer them up the wrong path all the weekend long and go and film seasickness scenes on Monday morning. That's what I would do.
JW actually said if they reboot the series, Alice has to be Lady Barbara. Perfect casting, I think, they said. Liz is nodding.
Yes.
Definitely.
Yes, she would be.
Yeah, so
She would be.
I mean, there's plenty of money hanging around, Apple TV and stuff now, isn't there? So everybody pick up the phone and ring Ioan because we need more Hornblower. Because I think, Kate, is it not right that we've now been completely deprived for 17 years? Master and Commander was the last big epic 18th century Navy stuff.
Wow.
And that's 2003. So it's the same year that Hornblower ended. So it's frankly not good enough. We all need swashbuckling sword.
And everybody loves Poldark and Outlander and all these kinds of things. So there is definitely a need or a desire, I guess. For it to
Alina's got her hand raised because she desperately wants us to try and get the cast of Outlander onto this as well. So let's
God, please, Outlander.
So we will now instigate a committee to reboot Hornblower. We'll have a hashtag and everything. So if everybody could actually don't all ring ITV because then they might get really fed up and not do it. Go and deal with it. But you can tell them that there's thousands.
I'll take it from here.
Yeah, you take it from here. But there's thousands of people out there who have not shut up about wanting Hornblower back, and it was every other question coming in was A, would they want to? B, would they do it? And C, why has no one done it? So yeah, I mean it's a much loved series, and it's nice that you have the friendship born out of it between you and with some of the other guys from the show as well, and that it's a happy memory for you all as well.
But also, Forrester wrote loads of novels for Ioan's age, for the age he is right now. Midshipman.
39.
Yeah, no, seriously. Well, he went, yeah, exactly. But what I mean is, there are endless stories. Actually, the Midshipman, I think he got to those 6th or 7th. I think he started off with Hornblower as a captain or a commodore or whatever it is.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and he went back and filled in the backstory. So
yeah, some people did ask, but Ioan, I don't know if you've read the books. Jamie, you have. They asked which book, if they were going to say to you, right, we will fund 1 2-hour episode, which book would you want?
You know what? I don't know them well enough, but I know
Okay.
the later ones are very interesting and political, and I think that would be for Ioan and ITV to pick one. But I know there are plenty of them that are really made for a man in the prime of his life, shall we say?
Yeah, for a 39-year-old to pull on that red tunic and go and see ITV.
Yeah, that's it.
Somewhere in the Caribbean.
Yeah.
Whichever novel's set in the Caribbean.
Guys, thank you so much for coming on to join us today. People have been dying to get at this, and I know that it's probably the longest episode we've ever done, and that none of them are going to care. They're all going to listen to it and then complain it wasn't even longer. So thanks for giving up your time to come on and talk with us.
Thank you so much for having me and great to hang out for a couple of hours as well with my buddy from the other side of the world under these strange circumstances. But love to all the fans who have stayed loyal over these years, and certainly the response that I had was really unforeseen, and it's still going, and I'm just truly humbled, and especially with what we're all going through right now. Thank you very much for this opportunity to revisit some of the history as well. Fascinating.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us. Jamie, just great to hear your voice and to hang out for a couple of hours with our distinguished friends. Honestly, it's again, just to reiterate what Jamie said, it's the character that I get recognised the most wherever I am in the world. And it's the character that I'm extremely, extremely proud to have played and to have represented. I mean, Hornblower really reflects well on me. He really does. I am as proud and very grateful that people think that I'm as earnest and as smart and as bright as Horatio Hornblower.
Yeah, but you've ruined that now with Andrew Irwin.
Yes, I have. But no, an absolute delight, and thank you for having us on. I mean, it's I know just from almost daily experiences that how much love there is out there for the series and obviously the books to begin with. So this has just been a delightful, delicious little respite from the crazy lockdown to come and join you. So thank you.
Sorry, I just want to thank Ioan's wife as well for.
Yes, Alice has been amazing. As soon as she heard that we wanted to do this, she said she had to take the phone to you and force you to sit down and talk on it. She was going to do it. And she's also the reason that Liz has been able to sit in with us as well, which has been lovely because it's kind of like Delia has been with us here in spirit too. And Kate, thank you so much for lending a bit of sensibleness to our nonsense.
I think Hornblower is what I think I went on Victory when I was 8 and then Hornblower came out when I was 10. And I think that's pretty much what then set me down the path to where I am now, I guess. So it's been really fun.
So the fact that she spends her time obsessing over 18th century documents is your fault, basically.
Unfortunately, so yeah.
Thank you so much for your time. It's been brilliant.
Are you kidding?
Thank you.
Thank you for putting it all together. Amazing.
I
It's been
really hope you get somewhere with ITV because, like Jamie says, there's so much more of a story to be told. It feels like it's half finished right now.
Yeah.
And you need to make everyone love you again after Liar.
Yes.
Don't talk about Liar.
Okay.
I don't want to know.
Alina, you have to watch Harrow as well. He really
that's a bit of light fare, yes, bit of fun.
Yeah, it's a bit of fun, but again, he's not exactly Hornblower in that. He's not like squeaky clean. So.
Oh no, he's not a good dad or a good husband or no.
He's a good doctor.
Very good doctor.
Yeah. Brilliant. Thanks very much. Liz, thanks so much for coming on as well. I hope it was good for you to come and sit with us. And
congratulations with the podcast. It's really great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
There now follows a public service announcement.
I'm Horatio Hornblower.
And I'm Archie Kennedy. The simplest gift you can give in these troubled times is to obey orders.
Indeed. The regulations are very clear in the matter. It is the duty of all of us to remain at anchor until the little people in the talking box signal you otherwise.
You don't want to end up getting flogged.
Good day to you.
Good day to you both.